Howdy. This is the 23rd of July on a Thursday, 1987. And by the way, the 20th, a couple of days, 3 days ago, was the 18th anniversary of the man landing on the moon. How about that? I wanted to talk a little more about these coyotes, kind of where they might stay and so on. It seemed like if you kind of learned where there might be one, you kind of got used to places to look, and if you caught a coyote out of that place, one had been staying there kind of regular, wouldn't be long, there'd be another move in there, just because it's a good place to go take a nap. They had a pretty good way to get away from there and get going if anything come along. And they usually could see kind of around the country pretty good, all but one side maybe, but along a ridge, along the side of a ridge, there'd be a little swale on the side. We called them little pockets, and somewhere along that, around that thing, be a real good place for one to be laying. This is daytime, of course. Or along the ditch, any kind of a ditch, a deep ditch, or a rugged, crooked little sucker, or kind of a wide, flat ditch. But different areas had a certain place that attracted a coyote pretty good. And you got so you kind of knew where to look. And you ride up there in a lot of places, and you could see better than the dogs could because they were down lower. You were up higher and you could see, and boy, if you said, there he goes, why, they got in gear, went to looking and running. And then when they saw him, boy, everything was going for a ways. But that's all you had to say, there he goes. And they got going. They got ready anyhow. And the old coyotes would go out the same way every time, seemed like. You approach it one direction, well, they'd go out a certain way, and if you come in from the other side, they'd go out a certain way, going the other way. And it was kind of interesting riding around through the hills. You kind of knew where them old coyotes ought to be laying. A lot of times you never saw a coyote, but I mean, you might ride forenoon and never see one, but the next time, well, you'd maybe scare several out or see them. Maybe only get one run, but anyhow, you could see the coyotes some days a lot better than you could others. They'd be laying around or sleeping. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. They always knew where to go, head for anyhow. Usually it was kind of up a ditch or down a ditch or across a ditch and around the hill and up over and down over the other one, and they kind of had a way to go. Didn't very often get right out in the open go straight out across an open place. They'd head for some kind of a advantage somewhere. A lot of times they couldn't make it, but that's the way they tried to do it. And now we might go bird hunting a while. That's quail hunting. They had sometimes they'd have 10-day season, and sometimes they'd have a little longer, or maybe they'd have every other day for a while, or whatever. But that was a lot of fun. You took your old shotgun and probably number 7.5 shot. And we had lots of quails around where we lived over there in the Kern's place. There were a lot of places for them. And we we sowed some, it was cane and Capricorn those days, and they had seed on it, and we mixed them together and sowed it pretty thick till the stalks didn't get very big, and it didn't grow up soft and tall either, but it had a lot of little seed on it. Each head had a little seed head on it. Each stalk did. And it made a lot of seed. That was really good for the quail. They would mow that, bunch it up, feed it to the cattle in the wintertime. So we had quite a lot of those little patches around, and made a lot of good feed for the birds. And then we had a good friend, one of the Smith brothers in the sporting goods shop down here in town, in the second block on the south side. And he'd get quail for us. He'd get some, I forget whether there was a male and 2 or 3 females, or whether there was 2 or 3 pair of them or what, but anyhow he'd get a few of them, and we'd take them out there and turn them loose in a certain place where we thought there ought to be some more quail. And we had 9 coveys out there one time, I remember, just scattered around there on that place. There were lots of little timber patches, brush patches, side of the banks, and bottom of the ditches, and alongside of them. There was quite a few little ravines run down through the place, and it's kind of all cut up. So there'd be a little field here and a little field there, and a bigger one over here and such, and there's grassland right at the edge of all of it. Patches of grass in a place where we raised some cane, maybe right to the side of it or up on top, and be fenced in. But anyhow, we had lots of quail over there. And we hunted mostly without a dog. But this Clyde Smith, he always had a dog. He spent most of the time training him, but anyhow, you go walking down through some of those places, kind of knew where them quail ought to be, and you scare them out. They'd be within 200 or 300 yards of a given place usually, sometimes farther, but little small areas they'd be some around there probably. If they wasn't there, they'd be someplace else pretty close. Anyhow, you scare them out. Everybody go to shooting. And try to remember where your quail went down. If you did get him down, probably did. And then you hunted them up. You missed them every once in a while because they'd be on a shooting sideways out around you kind of, or maybe you'd overshoot them if they was going down, or if they was shooting through the trees while they'd be ducking or dodging, and that'd get pretty good if you hit them. And we done a lot of hunting like that, real a lot of fun, and we ate quite a few birds. They're real good eating. Their breasts are real good, and that's about all there is to them, really. They got a little leg that's all right, but their breast is the main thing. And they got a good one, a good thick breast. But we done quite a lot of hunting that way, mainly around home there. You could go find some birds about any day if the season was open. And I remember one time I went down the creek down below and had a 410 shotgun, I think. And anyway, I was going down along the side of a creek and kind of looking for squirrels. Finally, I come to a big old cottonwood that had a lot of top in it. It was down over the bank from where I was, kind of the butt of it, but it grew up higher than I was. And golly, I saw a squirrel laying on this limb and a squirrel laying on that limb, and they were just kind of laying there, and I never did know why they were doing that. So many of them, there were 9 of them laying around on that tree, and they were just kind of laying there. Usually they get going when you show up, you know, or I've seen them lay like that, but if you move, they'll slip around a little limb out of sight. Just keep out of sight of you going around that limb, but these suckers are just kind of laying there. I think I got 7 of them. And finally they, 6 or 7, I'm not just sure which, but anyhow, they just, them things just kind of laid there. I don't know what was the matter with them. Only time I ever saw that many in a tree anyhow. It was big tree, big ravine come out of the pasture, had some pretty good trees in it, and there's a few big cottonwoods there on the side I was on that had holes in them. But I suppose they got all together there for some kind of a congregation. But we had squirrel that time for quite a while. We didn't usually hunt squirrel a lot, but we get one once in a while. On those quail, they always had a limit. Like each guy could get 3 or 5 or whatever, but that's all you're supposed to have is the limit. So you couldn't just go shoot them all. Thought you'd take 3 or 4 guys, get 3 apiece. That's a dozen. That's quite a few, you know, to make a good meal of. Later years, along in the 40s, I guess, George McCord wanted me to go pheasant hunting with him. He didn't hardly have any pheasants here at that time. And he had a son living out at Lebanon, which is out toward the Smith Center. Anyhow, they had a lot of hunting up there, pheasants. And I and George would go out there and hunt for a day with them. Had kind of a wild bunch of shooting there. The old pheasants get up and cackle and go, boy, they really get going. They're big, but they're still kind of hard to hit. And we'd go out there and hunt around that country quite a bit. Every year, once a day, once a year. Get, I think it was only maybe 2 or 3 limit on them most of the time. The old pheasants, their legs are got them old, kind of a bony, black, bony cords in them. They're made for running, and they got them old, kind of bony cords in their leg muscles. Out there in that country where those pheasants are pretty thick, they got swelled down through the fields. Most of them are grown up with sunflowers and weeds and stuff, and you have to walk down through that to scare them out. Had to put somebody at the other end of the slough to keep them from sneaking on out the other end, but sometimes you ain't in very good shooting position down in the sunflowers. I remember I was going up through a patch there, sunflowers were higher in my head, and an old cock pheasant went out, come out pretty high up, and I took a shot at him, and golly, he went east, and the farther he went, the higher he got. He just went higher and higher and higher and higher till he got, damn near out of sight over there. Then he just went kerplunk, fell dead straight down. We didn't even go over to hunt him because it was a long ways over there. Couldn't see the ground where he hit, but it was over behind the hill kind of. But he flew that far and then died. Got him enough, I suppose. Got to him after a while. But you weren't supposed to shoot hen pheasants. A couple of cocks is all you're supposed to get, I think. So, kind of rough hunting. You get one of them guys down crippled, they don't run, but they can put their hide under a postage stamp. They really can hide. It's really hard to find. We lived down on the Wildcat. We done a little duck hunting down there. You could sneak up the creek, run onto a few ducks once in a while. They weren't very big flocks, but they'd be 3 or 4 in a bunch, maybe. I remember it was probably about 17 or 18, somewhere around that area. There was people lived over across the creek from us, the Fords, and the oldest boy, he went into the Navy, in 18, but my dad had a new 1917 model Winchester pump gun. It held 5 shells in the magazine and 1 in the barrel, so you had 6 shells. In those days you could carry it full if you wanted to. Later on they had to put a plug in there so you could only get 2 in it. I think you only had 3 shells you could carry later on. But anyhow, he borrowed that old gun one time of Dad. He went duck hunting and come back. He was so excited and tickled to death. He'd sneaked up on 6 ducks and scared them up, and they had to come up through a timber to get out of there, go up through them kind of. And he went to shooting them as they come out of there, and they kind of come up in a row, he said, and he got all 6 of them. He just tickled to death. Every shot got a duck, and he just got all of them. Another time, about that same time, maybe a year or so before that, or 2, I just a little kid, I know. I didn't have any skates, but Everett had them. And it come a ice storm, just golly, the ice was a ½ inch thick on everything. And around the ends of the fields, the wagon trails around the ends of the fields, turn roads and stuff, was real good skating. And we had some cattle down in the stock field along the Wildcat. You had to go down there and cut the ice for them twice a day. But he skated down there for several days, I know, cutting that ice. And we'd run along with him, kind of, but he'd go to school on the ice skates, and home again, and skate everywhere he went. Lasted several days. It was real slick, though. Freddie and I about cut Everett in 2 one time down there. We lived up by the road, the old stone house on Russell's, where the Bluebell Nursery is on the north side of the road there. Anyhow, Dad got a hold of an old horse that was a good old gentle horse, but he had a kind of weak back. He had trouble of getting up sometimes. We kept him around there a while, rode him. All 3 of us would get on him and ride him at the cows. He had a good old horse. So one time we went over some kind of rough cow paths, and the old guy fell down. And he was... Freddie and I got clear of him, and Everett was laying crossways under him. And this old horse kind of had a high, bony back sticking up there. And we couldn't get the old horse up. Everett kind of caught under him, so we just finally took his feet, and his feet were uphill. And we took his feet and just rolled him over Everett. Just he come clear over and off of him when he got down below, kind of on the side hill. Then we helped the old horse and got him up, rode on, but I'd like to cut Everett in 2, that old bony back, out on his back, crossways. I sure remember that. But on his hunting, when I was growing up, there wasn't any pheasants here in this country, or no deer, and no prairie chicken. I guess there might have been some in the great big pastures south of here that hung on, but I never saw one until I was pretty near grown. But anyhow, after later years, after it got moved up on the hill there where they lived, they had some cane planted out there and shocked it, and then they mowed some of it and piled it up in piles for the feed. Prairie chicken kind of got thick up in that country that 2 or 3 years. There was a big flock of them around there, and they got to feeding there on that little patch of cane, and we went up there hunting. We shot a few of them. Golly, they're good eating. But we could see them coming. Oh, they're a mile or so away. They come a-sailing over there like a P-38. Boy, they really come across country just sailing. And maybe they'd make a pass over there low down and go on, and maybe they'd swing in there and land, and we could be kind of hiding in the shocks around there. Maybe we'd get a few shots at them, but golly, they go. And we hunted them a couple of years. Pretty good luck we had. Had a limit on them, of course. I forget how many we could get. 1 or 2 or 3 maybe. But and everybody got to hunting up in that country and kind of cleaned them down again, so there ain't so many left anymore. There's a few up there, I guess, in hills yet, but they got really hunting them thick that spell when we were on up farther in the bigger fields. They've about cleaned that bunch up. There's a few around, I guess, yet, but and they turned loose some pheasants and had people hatch a few and turn them loose down here, but they never took hold very good here. There's a few around, I guess, yet, but then the deer moved in here and they got thicker than the dickens. Still are. But sure changed a lot since back in the teens and the 20s, part of the 30s. We even had a spell here a few years back. There was quite a lot of fox got around here. Got to be kind of a nuisance in places. I don't think there's very many around now much, but I was talking about them old coyotes having a kind of a place to lay, and if you caught that one, well, another would move in there kind of later on, and it just seemed to kind of have a place that's good for them to lay. And with prairie chicken, when the owner's folks lived up there, or young and lived up there, or dad, they moved, chickens had a drumming ground out there on the hill where they drummed every spring, and then when they disappeared, well, there weren't any, of course, but when they come back, work back in here, they still use that same place as a drumming ground. That's they probably still, a few of them drumming there now yet, but that same spot. So it's natural for them to use the same kind of a place, I guess. Hey, did you ever go frog hunting? Day or night? That'll get you going pretty good. The daytime, take a pole and a short line on it, and see an old frog stepping somewhere and try to snake in there close to him so you can reach him, and maybe have a little red cloth on your hook. Dangle that over there easy like in front of him. I don't want to scare him, of course, but try to get that down there pretty close to him. Sometimes they'll grab it, and other times you can get down there and work it around there and get the point under his chin and jerk up on it. And when they get hooked, well, they try to kick the hook out of their mouth with their hind feet, it seems like, because they look like they're turning wrong side out, squonking, squonking. That's kind of a lot of fun. Some people hunt them at night with a flashlight, just go up and down the river, looking along the banks. That's all right, but some of them, instead of using a pole and a little short line and hook, they try to grab them by hand, just blind them with a light and grab them. But it's hard to get close enough to them sometimes to reach them on account of brush, or maybe they're sitting a little farther up the bank than they ought to be, or something. But it's quite a lot of fun. It's hard to get very many of them because they're not that thick. And you lose so many along as you go because they'll jump in the water and leave you. But it's quite a deal, and they're real good eating those hind legs. You dress them and get them in the pan too quick, why, they'll kind of stand up and want to climb out of the frying pan when they start getting hot. Just the way the muscles contract on the bones, I guess. But anyhow, some people don't like to fry them because they about jump out of the pan sometimes. But they're real good eating. Nice meat. They had a frog season. I don't know when it is this year, but a lot of times it's along about July or such. They have a season on it, and I guess a limit. You can find that out at the bait shop or somewhere where you get a license to go hunting or go fishing. Get your fishing license. Well, we got to quit this fooling around. I got some hay to rake and get put away. Along in the 50s, early part of the 50s, before the Korean War anyhow, 2 or 3 years, we got into a spell where the damn hay, you couldn't get it dry. You'd have to rake it, turn it over, and try to get it dried out. The rakes never were made to turn it exactly wrong side up. They'd roll it over and maybe it'd go back down like it was, and the wet side underneath, or you never just could turn it right wrong side up like it ought to be to dry on the bottom. So I got to working on a deal and thinking about it. I thought I was getting along pretty good with it, so come out in the paper about this old boy down here at the Viking, where the Ag Press is now, that building, they built that. They'd been there a few years. They made grinders and elevators and stuff like that. They were from a big company up in Illinois. And old John Erickson was president of it. Came out in the paper where he had quite a few patents on different things. And so I thought, boy, there's where I'll go. And I went down there and got to talk to him. He was a nice fella, and we visited about it a while and talked about it. And he says, I don't want to know, don't tell me anything what it's like. He said, just I want to know if I could kind of make a working model. And I said I thought I could. And he said, well, if there's anything you need, well, let us know and we'll furnish it for you. And so I picked up a little old Ford, a little pickup thing from Jim off of his combine, and got an old store to help me fasten it onto an old mowing machine to turn it. And then I put the tin on the back, fixed it like I wanted, kind of like a plowshare or a plow moldboard. And we tried a little bit on a little windrow hay we had out there, kind of light. And he said, when you get this all ready to show, why, let me know and I'll come out and look at it. So him and another guy come out and looked at it. They said, okay, now tear it all apart. Don't talk to anybody about it, and we'll get a patent on it for you. They had patent attorneys working in the patent office in Washington most of the time, and they had them do the search on it and see if they could get a patent on it. And they did. And they were going to build it and sell it, do everything. All I had to do was just let them have it, let them go, and help them if I could. Any questions about it? And so he said he had a grandson-in-law or a son-in-law or something that was graduating from college, and he was coming down here to work, and he was going to turn that over to him, let him look after the running of that thing. So they already bought some crazy wheels to put on the front of it like we was figuring, and they got them down here, and then they fooled around a while, and the Korean War come on, and they had to take a bunch of stuff and make for the government on the war part. So they took that and kind of slowed this other thing all down, and their whole works. And after it was over, their machinery was all out of date so far that they had to remodel most of it. And they got so busy, and they decided not to fool with this thing, this hay tool. But they just turned it back over to me, and I could have it, patent and all, do whatever I wanted to with it. But they were going to sell 1,000 of them a year or more, He said if they couldn't sell 1,000 a year, well, it wouldn't be much of a deal for them. But they were figuring to sell a lot of them. They sold a lot of machinery overseas, he said. But anyhow, they turned it back to me, and I didn't know what the devil to do with it. And finally in '64 we went up to Sun Manufacturing Company up in North Dakota. Get the name of the town, but they had advertisements in their magazine. I got to thinking maybe that's where I could sell it. This old boy Erickson down here, he said they could use that kind of a thing up there in the northern country where they never could get the wheat and stuff dry. They had to cut it and windrow it and just leave it lay there till it did get dry and to thrash a lot of times. It just never did get ripe good. And it's so cold it never did dry out and stuff very good. So he thought they could use it up there. So we went up there and I talked to the guy half a day, and he never did get much interested in it. They had rock pickers. They'd taken it almost hooked this thing on behind and made it work real good. They had a big kind of a pickup thing that picked up the rocks out of the fields. They call them rock pickers. Then they'd haul them off and pile them up somewhere. But it's a constant thing up there in that country to have to pick up those rocks that work loose. But I never did get it sold. And it'd be simpler today than it would have been then, because they wanted to make it to rake hay too, see. Nowadays they windrow the hay as they mow it, and if they hook that on behind their windrower and run under that hay and lift it up and flip it right side up just perfectly, the next day or so they could dry it out quicker. Sometimes they leave it lay there for 3 or 4 days before they can do anything with it on account of being damp and green underneath. It would still work good if somebody had it, knew what to do with it. But we had to figure out all this other stuff, how to rake it, and how to use a pickup to pick it up and rake it and all, put it in a windrow first. But nowadays they can hook on behind one of them windrowers and flip it over real quick, dry out the hay. I know it would work real good, but the patent run out a long time ago on it. So I just kind of letting it go. And that's my hay turner. I suppose I got $1 a machine out of it. It don't sound like much, but 1,000 or more of them a year would have made a little money. I could use that much now. $1,000 a year. That's a few dollars a day if you stop and think. Anyway, that was my hay turner. The thing of it is, in that haying business, if you leave it lay there too long, it rains on it again, and you mess around with it, and pretty soon it ain't hardly worth baling. And it might even get down to price-wise, if it is worth bailing, it might be worth $10, $15 maybe a ton if it was any good at all. But if you got it up in good shape, it might be worth 50. So from that to clear down to nothing is a lot of difference. And on 50 ton of hay or 40, that's got a little money. So it wouldn't be out of the way to run the darn thing over there once more. Turn it over, dry it out. That was my theory on it. Get it up out of the way before it rained on it again. Anyway, you could mow it one day and let it dry good on that side, and then you flip it over the next morning after the dew went off. Bale it after a while. Get it off the field, which could have made a lot of money. Little old model that I made, it done a real good job there. I mean, it worked real good. It turned that little old window right out behind there, and it turned it exactly upside down, bottom side up. It looked real good, but we never got to use it much. Like old Erickson, the guy from the Viking, he said, well, if you never get it sold, he says, one thing about it, you got your name in the patent office in Washington, D.C. That's something, he says. But it hadn't really paid me very much to have it there. I'd still like to put it on one of the back end of these new hay machines. If I had anybody on the farm, I would. But I guess it's gone. I am almost, so what's the difference? I gotta get Wayne straightened out on this fishing business. He don't know how to fish, and wants to know who taught me the most about fishing and where good places are and what, all this stuff. So I'll attempt to get him straightened out. So if he ever gets through school and gets his job all caught up so he has a vacation, he can go fishing. The channels, a good place to fish is right along the side of a kind of a good moving current. Along the side of it, a lot of times on the deep water side, or along the bank side, whichever makes a good place to fish. You can along the side of it, or where the current kind of fades out, spreads out into a deeper water. Right there where it fizzles out's a good place. That's where they kind of figure on a feeding. And that's north of our old timber down there, north of that sandbar on the other side, there's a good place along there where it's a dirt bank and kind of a wide flat channel through there. Pretty good water, and it's moving pretty good. fish out in there and let your bait go down a ways and maybe work over toward the bank pretty good. Ought to be a real good place for channels. You might even get a yellow once in a while on that kind of a bank. And where we caught that 55-pounder over there at the end of the timber, right along out there where the current is, the edge of the current. It's out farther, usually, kind of toward the middle, but if you can fish between it and that bunch of timber that's usually there, without getting tangled up too much, stay away from the timber, why, that might be a real good place for either one, channels or yellows. But it ought to be good for channels at least. Those are the kind of places you kind of want to fish. Or where it's a shallow place, pretty much clear across, which breaks off into a deeper hole. Why, along that's a good place, right there where it breaks over, right up on top. Usually a good place for fish to be working. I remember one time I went down on the Wildcat up above Russell's Airways, up in another, quite a little ways up. And I walked down around a kind of a big bend in the creek, and it was kind of a nice day in February, and there wasn't any ice on, and this was below a riffle where the water was running pretty strong off of the gravel, and down along the side of a bar, and then it kind of hit a bank and turned, and after it run into this bank, it went a little ways, and then it kind of started fizzling out, the current part. And I got to fishing out there, and I caught 12 there in about an hour, I guess. Just they were from 3/4 to 1 3/4 pounds. Just kind of decent kind of fish. And I think I threw 3 or 4 of them back, the smaller ones. But anyhow, that was a real nice mess of fish there in a little while. And they were all caught right there where the current fizzled out into a little deeper water, I guess. Probably. But that was one good time. And some people claim they want to be a fishing at 12 o'clock, whether it's night or day is a good time, but I never had too much luck that way. I used to go fishing in the afternoon out home there. About 3 or 4 o'clock was a pretty good time for them to bite, seemed to me like. Depending on the day, of course, and the time of year, but I had pretty good luck at that time of day. Then they'd fizzle off, and maybe 6, 7 o'clock at night they'd go again. Pretty good for a while, an hour or so. But a lot of times you run into, out there on the river, we used to run into them little stinkers 3 or 4 inches long, up to 6 inches long. Just eat your bait up and that's all you could catch. You just as well pull out of there and move and go somewhere that's kind of different than that, because that's all you're going to get there probably. And some days that's all you're going to get anyhow, is them kind of little old stickers. But that's the way that works. Freddie and I used to do quite a little fishing and talking about places to fish and stuff, but wherever he put his line, You could put yours right down close to it, but the fish always found his first, it seemed like. He's one of them kind of fishermen. If anybody caught a fish, he was the one that got him. And not that he knew any more than anybody, I don't think, but he just lucky. He even bird hunting. If the birds flew out, why, they'd go behind a bush or a tree from you and be right out in front of him, it seemed like. He's pretty lucky fishing and hunting. Anyway, the experience is your best teacher, probably. Your pointers don't help, but somebody else's pointers and theories don't always work for you. I mean, that's the way I got it figured out. Kind of, you find out more by experience than any other way. Sometimes when the current is running along the bank, that might be pretty good, but then it might be that over the other side out in the deeper water is a good place. Anywhere across the bottom there is, if it's a wide channel, why, they might be working out in the channel more. But it's real interesting to hunt around. They claim if you don't get something in about 20 minutes, why move, and I guess that's pretty right most of the time. Those old yellows, you can find them anywhere at different times. I'd find one most anywhere. And lots of times in the shallower water where it's 3 feet deep or so. They work in that quite a lot if the water pretty much needs to be alive and is moving a little somewhere or other. Them old guys. But we've caught some pretty good ones out in 2.5, 3 feet of water. If it's in the right place, a little log of land there or something. They work all around those kind of places. Besides deep water, I've caught a lot of them tie a line on a pontoon when they're fishing, or when they're pumping sand. Got a line strung out across the river, where I tie a line on that in places, depending on where it's at and what it's like, current and everything. But I've caught a lot of fish off that old pontoon. Pipeline, and they put them in there 2 or 3 feet deep. The old thing will work out across them big open places, right kind of water, and they'll do a lot of good sometimes. 30-pounders, you get them out there. I remember the first good-sized fish Freddie and I caught down on the river there. We had a good old rowboat, and we were going to set some line, and we tied this line on we nailed a willow pole on a old elm tree that had fallen off the bank into pretty deep water. And the stump was upriver and limbs are down, and it was laying there, and it had a kind of a hole in the center of the top of it. in the center of the tree, kinda. Had a hole open down in there, and we put this line down in there that all clear down underneath. And we saw we had something on that the next time we looked at it. So I got up on there where I could work the pole good, sitting on this tree, and Freddie, he was going to get his boat down in under there around in this hole where he could dip him up easy. So he did. And the old fish was making a pull way down in there, and I got kind of started sideways, and I just brought him up around and lifted him up kind of. When he come up around there, well, he slapped the dip net on him. He was going to dip him up with a dip net, but the damn little old net wouldn't go and about down to his eyes. Wouldn't hardly fit his head at all. So that didn't work. But we fooled around there, and he finally got a hold of him and got him in the boat. But he was a 24-pounder. He's a long, old, slim fish. We thought we had a pretty big one then. That willow pole's tacked on a log somewhere where you can get it out away from getting snagged up. This is a real good way to fish. Put a line on that and be sure it ain't going to get tangled up down under there somewhere. That's a real good way to fish. For those old yellows, I put one out in front of on the upside of a stump laying in the, kind of the edge of the sandbar, but it had a little channel on both sides of it. One side was just a small channel through there, and the other side is out into the main river. But this is the up end of up above the stump end. I put a pole on there one time, and the old boy had got on there. The water was only about 3 feet deep, but I had this line out there anyhow, pretty well on the bottom. But I had a fish on it the next morning, and he weighed 54 pounds, probably the biggest fish I ever caught as far as his eyes were wider apart, and he was a little bit longer, and he was just took up a lot of country, but it just got unspawned, so I figured probably that took off quite a little weight. But otherwise he was the biggest fish I think I ever caught. Some of them weighed a little more, but 61 pounds, but they were a little shorter kind of fish and chubbier and such. But anyhow, that's a real good way to fish. Be awful sure you got it down there where there ain't nothing going to get tangled up, because if they do, you just about lost them. Because they get wrapped up pretty tight there, and hard to get loose anyway. They ain't figuring on coming out of there or letting you get them out of there. I was fishing with my pole one time, tied up there to an old stump, just a loose stump laying out there. I was fishing about 40 feet down the river, kind of next to some other logs and stuff. I got a good strike, and he started for the other, some more brush over on the other side or down there, and I kind of hazed him off of that, pulled him sideways on him and got him turned away from that. Then he comes straight into me. He went under that stump I was tied to. And I couldn't hardly catch up with him. I finally caught up with him a little bit before he got to the boat, but I couldn't raise him off the bottom and or turn him or nothing. And he went right on around under that stump and roots and stuff, and I never did get him, but I thought he might have weighed 16 pounds or so. But I couldn't get him off the bottom when I did catch up with him. He was pretty close when I caught up, took the slack ball up, but anyhow, that's the way they do it. Them guys get under something. They don't very often. You never see one flop up. It's on a line that I've ever seen. If there's room to get the head down and their tail not sticking out, well, you don't see it because they're heading down to the bottom. And they'll keep heading down that way till they get tired, and you can finally lift them up and they quit trying so hard. That's when you want to just lift it up till their nose is sticking out of the water a little bit, and then they kind of quit. And you can reach in there and get a hold of their jaw and whoop them right over in the boat without them moving, most of the time. But you want to watch when you lay them down, or they take all the bark off your hand. Just by when you relax on them, well, they'll clump their old mouth shut sometimes and skin your hands, which don't hurt the next day or two much. You think you've done something if you got some of those marks on you. It used to be before the dam, when the rain had come and the river would start coming up, why, that was a good time to fish usually when it's first starting to come up for a while. But now they can open those tubes and they don't do nothing when they raise the river. They don't seem to like that very good for some reason. One thing is a lot of times it's clear water and it always runs faster with clear water than it does when it's good and muddy. But they seem like they don't care for that like they do when it's raising from a rain. And the different times of when the weather is stormy kinda, it's a good time to go fishing usually, when it's first coming in. And a clear moonlight night isn't really very good usually. The dark of the moon, the wind blowing is a good time. You always need a little wind. Didn't get too calm, everything's calm. And if you see them old cows out in the pasture grazing hard, that's a good time to go fishing. But if they're all laying down in the shade or somewhere, why, I just will not go till they get up and get going. Because that's the way the fish are doing. The atmosphere deal affects them the same as it does the fish. And those are some real good pointers. A lot of good stuff. Fish kind of always like to either work on the bottom where it's loosening it a little bit with the current, wide, flat bottom in the river, or it's cutting hard on the bank or something, the current along there, somewhere along one side or the other, that current's probably a good place. And or it don't drops off into a deep hole where it's a getting deeper. Up on that, it's a good place. Lots of times they're coming up out of that deep hole, working up on the shallower places. And those old yellows are around about every stub that's sticking up out of the water. So it's a good way to do, just get out. One time Rodney and I were fishing, had a line set off of a tree that had lodged kind of out in the middle of the river over across from the sandbar. We had a line tied on that and thrown out there on a heavy weight. A couple of hooks on it, I guess, 2 or 3. Anyhow, he was pulling this line in, and seemed like they had one fish on it part way down, and then when he got to the out end, why, he says, gosh, he said, it's snagged up out there. And he pulled around with it a little bit. Pretty soon it just come free and loose. And we pulled it in and had about a 3 or 4 pound carp on it that was dead. But something had been chewing on him on both sides of him and had chewed up within about 4 inches of his mouth and taken the scales kind of off of him way up there. The old yellow had been chewing on him and hadn't swallowed him yet, and got him clear down anyhow. And when Rodney got to fooling with him, why, he just let him have him. He pulled right out. And we was probably an hour too quick on that, running them. We certainly lost some kind of an old yellow down in there. And then Ansel Armstrong came out after the tornado a day or two, and he had a boat and wanted to go fishing, so we put it in down there and fished all night. And we caught, I don't know, I guess we got probably 4, maybe 5 altogether that night. We had pretty good luck early and got a couple of pretty good sized ones and took them out his place and dressed them and come back and caught some more. We had a real good time there that night. And old Norm Griffith was a pinky. He was a good old fisherman. Kind of hard to keep happy all the time, but he was a good old fisherman. We caught an awful lot of fish down there. But like I said, if the cattle are all laying down and sleeping and the birds aren't even moving and nothing much having any activity, why, just well wait a while till they get up and start moving again. The birds start singing and moving around, and all animals, in fact. It's a pretty good sign. So look for all that stuff and go fishing. Rach came here one year for her birthday, spent a week. That's the first part of October. And we done a real good job of catching fish that time while she's here. The weather was just right, I guess, and all together we caught a lot of fish. Caught 4 one night. That's the best we ever done. 2 big fish and a couple of medium-sized ones. but we caught fish every time, I think. Caught a lot of fish that week. Maybe in the morning there'd be a little haze of fog about 3 or 4 feet high off the water. That made you think you're going to catch fish when you go down there, and you usually did. So all in all, that's kind of the way it goes. From the last part of May, middle of May into June, maybe up to the 4th of July, along in there. Might be a good time if the weather's right in the spring. But you get down into the first half of October, and if you got any kind of weather at all, you can't beat that time of year for those old yellows. That's when they do the best. They've already got their spawning done in June or July, last part of June, July, and then they've kind of messed around all summer, and October they're getting full so they can hide out all winter. And besides, don't forget, on those yellows, you got to have a line tied somewhere where there's some give. You can't tie it solid to a log. Put a big look at an inner tube in there, or a pole that will have some give to it, some spring and strength. Or you just won't ever probably keep one of them old guys, because they'll bust that line or something, tear loose. They got to have a give to it someplace. And as far as the wind is concerned, north wind's not much good, east, northeast, southeast isn't too bad, but that north wind isn't much good. There's an old saying, when the wind is in the north, the fishermen go not forth. And when it's in the east, it's neither good for man nor beast. And in the south, it blows the bait in the fish's mouth. But when it's in the west, that's when it's the very best. That's an old timer. Kind of holds true. I wanted to point out a thing about these birds and the cattle and stuff. They get up and eat every day as far as that goes, but you can tell, like the birds, they're doing a lot of skirmishing around, and the cattle are up eating like they was hungry and showing a little extra activities is what I've been talking about. They eat every day as far as that goes, but you might have to wait 2 or 3 days before they do that, or maybe a week, but you can tell if they're really getting after it. Birds are easier to tell about because they're doing a lot of skirmishing around. And there's another thing about fish. They don't like where the sand is moving. That sand washing, moving, they don't like that. They don't like to feed there where the sand is moving. They might feed along a sandbar or something, but the sand isn't moving where they're feeding. So you might keep that in mind. One of the biggest drawbacks, problems you have of fishing for little more yellows are those gar fish. Those suckers will take the bait off before the yellows can get there, especially in the spring of the year and through the summer. Get into October, they kind of seem to let up some and don't eat it off so fast. But that's one of the biggest problems. Them suckers are taking your bait But you gotta fight it, I guess. And another thing, you better get that line that's kind of woven together and hard old stuff with a good test on it, like a 250, 300 pound test. That braided line won't last on an old yellow very good. They'll wear it out. It fluffs apart so bad. They might even wear it out and get off before you get there. That old loose woven stuff or braided stuff. That old hard line's what you want. And you can most always take it up when you get done fishing and use it another year or two. I got some out here I've probably used 3 or 4 years, and it's still good line. It don't seem to get rotten like some line used to. So that's more stuff. Well, I've told you a lot of stuff about them old yellows and channels and such, but you probably have to go somewhere else for a lot of good tips on them crappie and bass and white bass and all that stuff. Because I'm no expert on that, because I never cared about catching them much. Nothing to catching those crappie, really. Just finding where they are and then just dipping them out is about all it amounts to. And then about a half a day's job of dressing. If that's what you like, that's fine with me. But those old yellows, if you ever get to catching them, that's what you want to do. It's a real rewarding deal. And they're good old fish. They're very capable fish. And if you can catch one, you've done something pretty good, I think. You got some meat, for sure. They're a good old kind of fish. I wish I could catch some more of them. Anyhow, go fishing when you get a chance. If you ever catch one of them 40, 50 pound yellows on your pole, you just as well figure he's gonna get away, 'cause you can't hold him. You might guide him a little bit around, but he's gonna go when he wants to go. And they're a tough old guy to turn. So, better figure on trying to set the line for him. Smaller ones you can catch, handle, but them bigger ones, they're about going to go somewhere. Walleye are a pretty good fish. They got good meat, what there is of it. And they don't bite you too hard when you're catching them, I don't think. Not that fiery. But a bass is a good fish to catch. They got a lot of excitement there when you catch one of them. And a walleye, northern, them suckers, if you're fishing in a boat, and you get one of them in the boat, they're worse than the gar. They mix everything you got in there all together. And they're just almost worse than the gar, flopping around. And they're not quite so good a meat as the walleye. But that lure baiting is a big, it's kind of a problem to me, is to find out which lure for what and when. And it's alright, but I never got with it too good. It just never got to be my dish is all, I guess. A lot of people, that's all they do, which is fine. Go fishing. We might talk a little about bait. Channel will take most anything. They like any kind of rotten stuff. The rottener the better usually. But they like toads, and little sand toads about a size of a quarter is a real good bait for them. Yellows will take them sometimes. And all kinds of stink bait for channels, shad sides and intros that are all pickled and doped up. They like that real good. And they'll eat beef brains if you can keep them on your treble hook. They're pretty good bait sometimes. They don't have much any taste to them, I don't think, but they like them anyhow. And walleye, they take I guess they'll take a worm and some kind of lures. But they're real soft biters of walleye. You don't know hardly if they're biting, and then when you do get one, why he isn't very wild. They don't bite very hard. But yellow grasshoppers, pretty good bait for channels. I like to take their long jumping legs off so they won't be kicking so hard. Fish grab on them and jerk them around, but they're pretty good bait. I've heard guys say that they use whatever's along the bank, whatever they can catch and pick up. That's what they use for bait. I don't know about all that, but I've heard people say that. It's a good idea to not make any more commotion than really necessary when you're sitting somewhere fishing, like in a boat, wherever. Just don't make any more commotion than necessary. And you get any fish, well, put them on a good stringer that you know will hold them, and tie it to the boat and throw the fish over the side and keep them alive as long as you can. They stay alive pretty good that way usually. And if you want to move, all you got to do is pick them up and put them in the boat, and then you don't have to untie the line or nothing. And you can get along pretty good that way. Farm pond fishing is pretty good sometimes. You got good kind of fish in the pond, and there's any amount of them, and they get hungry, boy, you can get along pretty good there for a while. It's kind of hard to pick a time when the channels, good sized channels, will bite in a farm pond, but when they do, it's worth working on. They have the special times they feed. Feed when they want to is the main thing. Depending on the weather and conditions of the water and all this go together. They feed some every day, I'm pretty sure of that, but maybe it's something that just comes by and they grab it. But probably night's a good time to fish there. Night's a good time to fish most anywhere, but given kind of a night. I'm about to run out of stuff here, and I kind of wanted to fill up this tape and about got it done. And if you keep a pencil and paper handy while you're listening to this, why, you might think of something you would like to know that I forgot about. And if you do, why, we'll try to give it some kind of an answer. If you catch some kind of a small channel that you don't know for sure about, well, you ought to make up your mind whether you want to keep him or not. And if you don't want to keep him, throw him back right away. That way he has a better chance. Get him back in there. So that way you don't have to suffer around or maybe get sick and die. If you can catch enough of the smaller ones, well, you're in good shape, but if you don't, well, you don't have much. That's the idea. I got into some moon eyes, golden eye or moon eyes. Big, they got big eyes. They're scale fish, kind of light colored, and they don't. I've seen a few small ones, like 5 or 6 inches, but I got into some of them one time up above our place there, along the bar in the channel. You were probably along. Kids were catching the toads and I was catching them things. And they weighed about 2 pounds, a little over, some of them. But Lord, they're fast, and man, they go. They were eating them toads and just pick them up and go. You couldn't hardly catch up with them. Maybe you remember it. You guys are running up and down that sandbar catching toads. That's the only time I ever saw those guys, especially that size. But I caught 4 or 5 of them that day, just sitting there eating them the toads. I don't know what become of them or how come, but that's I haven't seen very many small ones since either. I don't know what happened to them. I suppose there's some still in there, but they got a big yellow eye. And they sure fast when they take a bait. Well, y'all get all picked up and figure out what's going on and go fishing. And take somebody with you if you want to. If you be quiet. Fish like you tell him to. that sort of stuff. Don't rain scare your fish or get tangled up in your line or tip the boat over if you're fishing in a boat. Anyhow, go fishing and have fun. And if you can catch a fish or two, why, that adds to it. Good place to visit is while you're fishing. A couple of guys can sit and visit, talk over old stuff and things, and